What's going on, family? This is Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. Today I'm going to be placing 10 of these men in my Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. But before I do, I want to make something crystal clear. An opinion is subjective. That's what it is. It is subjective. So when we talk about something that is subjective, what are we talking about? We're talking about your opinion, your character, your beliefs. You envision what you see based on the way you feel. But one thing that cannot be disputed are facts. Facts are based around statistics, something that has been done before. Now, the men that I have chosen are based on my criterias. What are my criterias? What did you do during the time? In this case, you were fighting. What were your accomplishments? Did you accept the challenges that were in front of you? The fighters that were around you? Did you try to fight them? And if you did, how did you accomplish that? In this case, how many champions did you fight? If you never got an opportunity to fight for champions, how many contenders did you fight? If you never got an opportunity to fight for contenders, the fighters that you did fight, how did you handle that? Now, one thing we have to keep in mind, the black fighter was not given the opportunity to fight for titles. Now, you had a few. You had Joe Gans, who was the lightweight champion. The Barbados Demon, Joe Walcott, who was the welterweight champion. You had George Dixon from Canada, who was a featherweight champion. Then later on, you had Kid Chocolate, who defeated Benny Bass. He was a champion in the featherweight division and the junior lightweight division. Tiger Flowers defeated Harry Greb in 1926 to become the middleweight champion. Dixie Kid became welterweight champion after the Barbados Demon Joe Walcott. But in the heavyweight division, you didn't have your first champion until 1908, Jack Johnson. After chasing Tommy Burns around the world for several years, finally cornered him in Sydney, Australia. And he was given an opportunity to face Tommy Burns, who stood 5'7" for the world heavyweight title. But before that, Jack Johnson would be colored heavyweight champion. He would defeat Denver Ed Martin in 1903. Now, after defeating Tommy Burns in 1908, he had to relinquish the colored heavyweight championship belt. And the honorable men at that time were Joe Jeanette, and Sam McVeigh. Now, these two men were in a brutal fight. They fought each other several times. It was a 15-round bout. Both men went down 47 times. But Joe Jeanette came out victorious, and he would face my number one greatest fighter of all times, Sam Langford. Now, I just want you to understand, I'm coming at these stats at the top of my head. I've been studying them long enough where I should be able to do that. So if I get one date confused, please don't shoot me. Now, Sam Langford, known as Samuel Edgard Langford, he was known as the Boston Tar Baby or the Boston Bone Crusher. He fought in the lightweight, welterweight, middleweight, light heavyweight, and heavyweight divisions. He stood 5'7.5" and had a 74-inch reach. He was born March 4th, 1883. He died January 12, 1956. He had a fighting record of total bouts 256, 180 wins, 128 KOs, 29 losses, 39 draws, and he had over 200 no-decision fights. You see, Sam Langford fought over 500 fights. Now, a lot of the record books, and I have plenty of them, doesn't necessarily show 500 fights, but I do have receipts showing that he fought over 500 fights. Now, his first title opportunity was against a lightweight by the name of Joe Gans, the old master. He fought him December 8th, 1903. He defeated Joe Gans, but because he was 4 pounds overweight, he was not given the title. So Joe Gans would remain lightweight champion of the world. And keep in mind, that was the only time that the lightweight was in the contract. The title was in the contract. He would face Jack Blackburn. Jack Blackburn was an outstanding lightweight. He fought him 6 times, 4 draws, 1 win, 1 no decision. The 1 no decision was a distance fight, which means it was unlimited. They fought for several hours, and they got to a point where the fight was called to a halt, and it was categorized as no contest. Now, Jack Blackburn would later on become Joe Louis's trainer. Now, I did a profile on Jack Blackburn. Type in Jack Blackburn, Scrapbook Boxing, and learn more about Jack Blackburn. Now, he would fight Joe Walcott, the Barbados Demon. Fought him November 5th, 1904. They called it a draw. And many observers felt as though Sam Langford defeated Walcott. He would face Jack Johnson April 26, 1906 for the colored heavyweight championship. It would be called a draw. Jack Johnson would remain colored heavyweight champion. He would face Stanley Ketchel April 27, 1910. It would be considered no decision. Some records say a draw. And almost everyone felt as though Sam Langford defeated Stanley Ketchel. Now, Stanley Ketchel already had in his contract that he would not defend his middleweight championship strap for a colored fighter. But in the rematch, it was not in that contract, and Sam Langford was promised an opportunity to have a rematch with Stanley Ketchel and fight for that middleweight championship strap. Unfortunately for Stanley Ketchel, he'd be shot by Walter Dipley. Stanley Ketchel had molested Walter Dipley's daughter, and he was shot and killed. So Sam Langford would never get that opportunity. He would move up and face the light heavyweight champion, Philadelphia Jack O'Brien. That was a draw. Sam Langford had actually defeated Jack O'Brien. Title was not on the line. They called it a draw. That was on April 15th, 1911. Now, he would face Harry Wills 17 times. He would win a couple of fights. Harry Wills was a very tall and strong fighter. But he would also face colored heavyweight champion George Godfrey, colored heavyweight champion Joe Jeanette, black middleweight champion Tiger Flowers. He would face colored heavyweight champion Sam McVeigh, welterweight champion, black fighter Dixie Kidd, fought him twice. Dixie Kidd would be welterweight champion after the Barbados Demon, Joe Walcott. He would defeat Ed Gunboat Smith. Very strong fighter was Gunboat Smith. And that's not even a handful of fighters that Sam Langford would face and defeat. He was in there with Harry Greb. He was in there with multiple fighters. So I have him ranked number 1 as the greatest fighter of all times. Harry Greb. Edward Henry Greb. I have him ranked number 2 as greatest fighter of all times. They call him the Pittsburgh Windmill or Smoke City Wildcat. Your choice. He fought in the welterweight, middleweight, light heavyweight, and heavyweight divisions. He would be light heavyweight champion when he defeated Gene Tunney. Gene Tunney suffered his only defeat in the hands of Harry Greb. And he would win the middleweight championship of the world in 1923 by defeating Johnny Wilson. And the thing about it is he had defeated Gene Tunney and had the light heavyweight championship strap, and then he went down to face Johnny Wilson for the middleweight championship strap, and he would hold both of them simultaneously. Now, Gene Tunney would get that title back, and he would face Gene Tunney a total of 3 times. He would win 1 and lose 2. But he was in there with a fighter that defeated Jack Dempsey twice. Now, after more than 20 years of studying Harry Greb, I come to the conclusion that he fought like the Vancouver Canadian welterweight, Jimmy McLaurin. When Jimmy McLaurin defeated Young Corbett III for the welterweight championship strap, he would lose it later on to Barney Ross. In fact, he had a 3-fight war series with Barney Ross. Did Jimmy McLaurin. But Harry Greb fought twice as aggressive as Jimmy McLaurin. So vision Jimmy McLaurin fighting twice as aggressive. That was Harry Greb, based on my 20-year assessment. And he'd be in there with fighters such as Tommy Gibbons, who defeated, or actually fought, Jack Johnson. Jack Dempsey. Excuse me. Let me start this over. Tommy Gibbons fought Jack Dempsey. He fought Gene Tunney. He was in there with a lot of the greats at his time. I'm speaking of Tommy Gibbons. He had a brother by the name of Mike Gibbons, who was in there with all of the great fighters of his time in the middleweight division. As a matter of fact, when Stanley Ketchel was killed, he was awarded that title as an interim champion. Never fought for it, never defended it. He fought Joe Chip. Billy Miss. Billy Miss was an outstanding heavyweight. Faye Kaiser fought him several times. Jack Blackburn. Jack Blackburn, as I said, he was a great lightweight. He fought Sam Langford, and he was a trainer of Joe Louis. Ban Levinsky, who's a light heavyweight champion. Buck Kaus, very good fighter. Eddie McCooty, good fighter. Mike Mateague took the light heavyweight championship strap from battling Siki. Leo Florian Hook, fascinating fighter. Michael Dow was a champion. Bill Brennan faced Jack Dempsey in 1920. Soldier Jones, Kid Norfolk. Kid Norfolk was a light heavyweight champion in the color division. Took the title away from Lee Anderson. He was a phenomenal fighter. Trained out of Greb's Gym on 116th Street in Harlem. I did a profile on Kid Norfolk. Type in Scrapbook boxing, Kid Norfolk. He fought Gene Tunney 3 times. Won 1, lost 2. Tommy Loughlin, one of the best light heavyweight champions of all time. Sam Langford, Al Roberts, Jimmy Dorsey. Johnny Wilson. Defeated him in 1923 and then gave him a rematch and defeated him again. Ted Moore. Ed Gunboat Smith. Allentown Joe Gans. Welterweight. Outstanding fighter. Welterweight color division. Roland Todd. Mickey Walker. Mickey Walker was a welterweight champion. Took the title away from Tiger Flowers. Now, Mickey Walker fought all the way up to the heavyweight division. He went the distance with Jack Sharkey. They called it a draw. But when he fought, and matter of fact, Jack Sharkey 2 weeks later fought for the heavyweight championship strap by defeating Max Schmeling. Max Schmeling would knock out Mickey Walker. Mickey Walker, they called him the Toy Bulldog. He was a phenomenal fighter. Harry Greb would face Roland Todd. Powell Moore. Powell Moore was from Philadelphia, a very good fighter, as well as Powell Reed. So I have Harry Greb, the Pittsburgh Windmill, number 2 greatest fighter of all times. Number 3, I have Walker Smith, better known as Smitty. You know him as Sugar Ray Robinson. Sugar Ray Robinson fought in the lightweight, welterweight, middleweight, and light heavyweight divisions. He was born May 3rd, 1921, in Alley, Georgia. He died April 12th, 1989, in Los Angeles, California. I had the pleasure of meeting Sugar Ray Robinson. I met him in 1979 and 1982. Taught me a lot about the game. I spoke to him for at least 2 hours. the first time and like an hour and a half the second time. Just one-on-one conversation with him. And he was something else. It's one of my highlight moments in this game. And he had a total boss of 202 fights, 171 victories, 108 KOs, 19 losses. He had 6 draws and 2 no contests. The majority of those losses were towards the end of his career. He was in it for the money. He retired at the age of 45 in 1965. And they gave him a welcome party, a retirement party. And you had Gene Foreman, Carmen Basilio, Carl Bobo Olsen, Randy Turpin. Jake LaMotta couldn't be present because he was being investigated for a dive he took with Billy Fox. Sugar Ray Robinson had an outstanding amateur career. He fought all inner city titles. And he had an amateur record of 85. Some records say 89. No losses with 69 knockouts. He had 40 knockouts in the very first round. He fought great fighters in those amateur divisions, such as Willie Pep, Andy No-Now, Louis Spider Valentine. Matter of fact, Louis Spider Valentine was a phenomenon in Harlem at that time. And Ray Robinson would defeat him in 1940 for the lightweight championship in the Golden Gloves. That same year, he would face a fighter by the name of Ray Esclaria. Fought him on the undercard on October 4th, 1940, of Henry Armstrong and Fitzy Zivit. But Ray Robinson was something else. He was one of the greatest fighters of all time. I have him the greatest pound for pound, greatest fighter of all times. One thing a lot of people don't know, Ray Robinson, Louis Spider Valentine, Joe Sadler, later known as Sandy Sadler. You had a guy by the name of Danny Cox. They were all working at the Harlem Opera House in Harlem. You see Harry Smith. He was a colored middleweight champion, took the title away from Jack McVeigh back in the 20s. And he was a mentor to a lot of the fighters that I just mentioned in Grubb's gym. And he got him jobs at the Harlem Opera House before he passed away. He was an outstanding fighter and humanitarian. But getting back to Sugar Ray Robinson, he would face Sammy Angot. Sammy Angot would be the NBA lightweight champion. He fought Pittsburgh's Jackie Wilson. Ray Robinson would face Marty Servo, who was a welterweight champion. Fitzy Zivit, who was a welterweight champion. Jake LaMotta, welterweight. He was a welterweight, but he was also a middleweight champion. Defeated Jake LaMotta in 1951 for that title. He would face Jake LaMotta 6 different occasions. He was beat by Jake LaMotta in 1943. Came back and defeated him 3 weeks later. He would face Henry Armstrong in 1943. That's a fight that I hate to talk about because those are my 2 idols. He would face Paul Pender. Paul Pender was a middleweight champion. Carmen Basilio, middleweight and welterweight champion. Gene Foreman fought him several times. Gene Foreman was a middleweight champion a few times. In fact, he was the only fighter that knocked out Carmen Basilio twice. He fought Bobby Dykes from Texas. Jose Basora, outstanding Puerto Rican fighter. Young Gene Buffalo. Ozzie Bulldog Harris from Pittsburgh. Georgie Abrams, who fought Tony Zale. He fought O'Neal Bell from Detroit. O'Neal Bell was a dynamic puncher. Artie Levine, powerful puncher from Brooklyn. California's Jackie Wilson. Sammy Angot, I believe I mentioned him. Maxie Berger, Ruben Shank, just to name a few fighters. He was in there with Joey Maxim, 1950, I believe it was 1952, and he couldn't continue because his potassium ran out of his body. So he retired after the 14th round. Matter of fact, Joey Maxim would lose that title that same year to Archie Moore. So Sugar Ray Robinson is my number 3 pick, one of the greatest fighters of all time. Henry Armstrong, I have him ranked number 4, greatest fighter of all time. Formerly known as Melly Jackson in his first career. Second career, Homicide Hank, Henry Armstrong. He fought featherweight champion Petey Sarin, defeated him. Welterweight champion Barney Ross defeated him. And Lou Ambers, lightweight champion, defeated him and held all 3 titles simultaneously. Now, he was born December 12, 1912, Columbus, Mississippi. He died October 24, 1988. I had the pleasure of meeting him. Spoke with him for a long time as well. Great fighter was Henry Armstrong. Now, the professional debut, July 28, 1931, he was knocked out in 3 rounds. The thing with Henry Armstrong, in 1937, he would have 27 fights, 26 knockouts. The only fighter he didn't knock out was Aldi Spoldy. But that same year, he would collect the featherweight championship strap from Petey Sarin, as well as a welterweight championship strap from Barney Ross. He'd have one of the greatest years any fighter would ever have. In 1938, he would defend that title 5 times. Outstanding fighter was Henry Armstrong. He would knock out Baby Casanova in 3 rounds. Mike Belois, who was known as the Bronx Spider, he was a champion as well. He knocked him out in 4 rounds. Juan Zorita, Aldi Spoldy, he didn't knock out. Lou Ambers took the lightweight championship title from him, then he lost it to Lou Ambers. He fought Maxie Shapiro. Maxie Shapiro was in there with 7 champions. Baby Arizmendi fought him 5 times. Great Mexican fighter. I have him ranked top 15 greatest Mexican fighters of all times. October, like I said, he defended his title 5 times. Tony Chavez and Charlie Burns and Lee Feldman. Trying to think of these guys at the top of my head here. Chalky Wright, great Mexican fighter. Wound up becoming a champion. And he lost his title to Willie Pep. I have Chalky Wright in the top 10. He wound up retiring and acting with Mae West. But just to give you some idea on the fighters that I'm talking about, Henry Armstrong stood 5 foot 5.5 inches. He had a 67-inch reach. He never really fought more than 138 pounds. That was basically the most he weighed in his entire career as a fighter. He was a phenomenal fighter, was Henry Armstrong. Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali. A dynamic fighter was Muhammad Ali. Now, Muhammad Ali was known as the Louisville Lip. And he was born January 17, 1942, 6'3" heavyweight. His manager was Herbie Muhammad. His trainer was Angelo Dundee. He was from Louisville, Kentucky. He fought a fighter by the name of Doug Jones. Doug Jones was out of New York. Muhammad Ali used to name the rounds that he would knock his opponent out, and he couldn't do it with Doug Jones. In fact, Doug Jones dropped him in Madison Square Garden.